Well, this is All Out Politics, news, debate and opinion from the heart of Westminster. Time now for our daily debate. Today, it's Brexit, a rematch for the 52%, the Conservative MP Nadine Dorries, and for the 48%, we're joined by Labour's Liz Kendall.
For the country, Adam, for the country.
All right. Well, Nadine Dorries is the Conservative MP for Mid-Bedfordshire and supported the Leave campaign. Liz Kendall is the Labour MP for Leicester West and supported Remain in the EU referendum. Well, I just want to ask you, first of all, how you think it's going. Newspapers seem to be rather losing heart that the government knows what it's doing handling Brexit.
Yeah, the only reason why they're losing heart, Adam, is because they have nothing to write about and no information. And I really fail to understand why the media think that 27 member states are allowed to hold their cards close to their chest, but our British Prime Minister is expected to lay hers on the table for them to write about. Of course, she isn't going to expose what she's doing or provide that information. It isn't going to happen. So the British media are going to have to get used to that. They're going to have to suck it up and wait until it's time for them to know, like everybody else, what is happening going forward.
OK, suck it up.
Look, the media, just like MPs, are going to ask questions about the future of our businesses and employment rights and environmental standards, and they're going to hold the government to account.
And they will be told in due course at the right time.
And I think what is concerning is the sense of confusion within government between those, you know, the hardline Brexiteers, the three Brexiteers, and people like Philip Hammond. I'm really concerned that there isn't a plan, that Theresa May isn't trying to bring the two sides together. I mean, I made a slight joke earlier about we're for the country, but you know, there's going to have to be compromise. There's going to have to be give and take on both sides if we're going to get the best deal for Britain. And crucially, Theresa May needs, I think, to spend more time talking to other European countries, particularly Angela Merkel, than she does focusing on the States or India if she's going to get the best deal for Britain.
Well, first of all, how do you know, Liz, who she is and who she isn't talking to? Just because the media haven't been told doesn't mean that you don't know.
Yeah,
and when you say which two sides? Well,
and
when you say negotiation, what negotiation?
You know that
it's Brexit. We are leaving.
No, but Nadine Dorries, I mean, you've been a very active backbencher, standing up, holding the government to account on a number of issues over a number of years, and yet you now seem to be saying, actually, people have spoken, go away, it's not your business anymore. It's not for anyone who is concerned about their own future or their family's future or their business's future to discuss these matters or ask questions. That seems to be an extraordinary position to take.
That's an extraordinary extrapolation from what I've just said.
Well, it's not.
Yeah, well, it is. Look,
you said you're going to find out in due time. How dare the media question all of this?
Well, of course the media can question when there is something to question. You know, John McDonnell said yesterday, which was interesting. John McDonnell said yesterday, Article 50, you know, the Supreme Court are very unlikely to overrule what's already been said. Article 50 is probably going to go for a vote. Very reassured to hear John McDonnell say yesterday that Labour will support a vote on Article 50, and that's because
the Right Honourable John McDonnell.
Right Honourable, sorry, yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know, and the fact is that if the Labour Party are going to support a vote on Article 50, then following that vote, that's when all the information will be made available. And I'm sure there will be debate, and I'm sure there will be negotiation, but there won't be debate on these 2 points. We will have access to the single market, not membership of it, and we will take control of our borders. And I would imagine that those two provisions will be written in stone.
My concern from the stories that we've seen this week is within government there's no clear sense of direction. I don't think enough time has been paid on talking to other European countries. We've seen today in the papers that there may be a possibility that Angela Merkel will look at changes to freedom of movement. I think there are other European countries too who, when they look at the rise of the far right in their own countries, realise that Europe has to change. But where I know from speaking to businesses who've been trying to get a sense of what's going to happen, and they cannot wait to find out because they've got to make long-term business decisions. They think that there's no decisions being taken in government, there is confusion about what's happening, and they above all need security for the future, and that's what we want to see from the government
Liz,
too.
I find it amazing that you talk about confusion within government. One day last week, Keir Starmer at 10 o'clock came out with the Labour Party position. Tom Watson came out with a further position an hour later. And then Jeremy Corbyn came out with a totally different position an hour later. There is only confusion in one party at the moment, and that's the Labour Party. Well, it certainly isn't in ours.
Nadine, you won't be surprised to hear that I completely disagree with that. We're not going to be voting against triggering Article 50, but we do want to see the best deal for Britain. And for me, that does mean the fullest possible access to the single market. We want to retain workers' rights, protect environmental standards too, and to see sensible changes around freedom of movement.
Could we perhaps be making a fuss about nothing? I mean, after all, we had earlier this week inflation figures, which didn't seem to be as concerning as people thought. Today, we've got relatively good employment figures that perhaps the country and the economy is taking this in its stride.
Well, we haven't actually Brexited yet, and I am really pleased about the employment figures, but I think there are issues, longer-term issues in the economy. I think we will see increases in prices, and that pressures are building up in the system there. And for me, the big issue is how do we make sure that the economy works for everybody in all parts of the country? And my concern is there are already big regional disparities, and unless we get a sane Brexit, that could become worse.
But Liz, it's interesting to hear you say, you know, we haven't Brexited yet, because when the pound, well, no, but when the pound was not as strong as it should be. But your party, and I think you yourself actually, came out and blamed Brexit. You choose to blame Brexit when it suits you.
Well, the reason why...
And can I just say your comment on Angela Merkel? You know, we've got some very interesting elections taking place in Europe at the moment. Who knows if Angela Merkel will be leading Germany? I would imagine that if there is a, God forbid there isn't, if there is any kind of terrorist attack or any issue in France leading up to the elections, Marine Le Pen may win for France. Wow. She will be taking France out of the European Union faster than we will. And the European Union may be in collapse. We may not be the first country to lead. And also, Liz, can I just finish my point? In light of what's happening in terms of elections across Europe, and in light of what's happened in America and Donald Trump, I think a lot of people may be very pleased to have a moderate right-wing leader like Theresa May leading in a major country in Europe, taking control of our own Brexit negotiations in the moderate and in the very sensible way that she is.
What I think is there are some politicians within Europe who understand that Brexit wasn't just an issue for Britain, it raises real issues for the rest of Europe too, who are seeing the rise of the far right. And I think we should be focusing on getting the best deal for this country, but also working with those sensible voices across Europe who understand that Europe needs to reform too.
Nadine Dorries, given what you've been saying, given the, you know, whether people like it or not, where the world is, do you think the time now is for the Conservative Party and UKIP and Nigel Farage to kind of move closer together and start working with each other?
Why did you just group Nigel Farage, UKIP and the Conservative Party in the same sentence?
Well, because Nigel Farage is saying he wants to help the government, and he has access to
Nigel
Donald Trump.
Farage can say whatever he wants. Nigel Farage is not part of the negotiations, he's not part of the Conservative government, and he's certainly not part of any negotiations going forward. Now,
but
I don't see any scenario where that would change in the future going forward.
Well, Donald Trump sees an analogy between himself and Brexit. Nigel Farage was an architect of that. They are people of our times. If we are forging a brave new future away from Europe, shouldn't we exploit that?
No.
Why not?
No, Nigel Farage is the former leader of UKIP, which is a completely different political party. He has one MP in Parliament who he doesn't even speak to. So, you know,
he has a majority in the European Parliament, of British MPs.
Well, he won't have any MPs in the European Parliament going forward because we'll be Brexiting.
I mean, listen, the underlying reasons for Brexit are many, but one of them is that many people have felt left out and left behind by a global economy that isn't working for them. So alongside trying to get a sane Brexit, which doesn't hurt jobs and growth, we also need to see in next week's autumn statement some real action to boost infrastructure in all parts of the country and skills. And I would also like to see measures that help the ordinary working people that Theresa May says she wants to help get on, because Brexit isn't going to solve, Nadine, Brexit will not solve those underlying problems with the economy. And if we get the type of Brexit wrong, it will make those problems worse.
We are going to have to leave it there. Thank you both very much indeed.